Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special webinar. This is a tactical tech briefing, and have a very, very special focus today. It's all about strategies for a stronger grant application. Really, we could talk about there's no real grant application season. We have an expert on our panel, Moushé. If I'm wrong about that, but it seems like there's always grants. Am I right, Moushé? There's always grants opportunity. But we do have some urgency to doing this webinar now for our friends in law enforcement in New York State, the Empire State. There's an LETech grant that's available first time in 3 years. And so there is some urgency because the deadline for that specific grant is first week in September, September 2nd, I believe. And so it's really important that we do this now. But I want you to know we are going to be hitting a lot of areas regarding grant writing in general. And so the principles that we're talking about for LE Tech, while some of them are going to be a little more granular, are going to be applicable to any grant you're going after. So I'm just very excited about this webinar. We think it's going to be super helpful for everybody who's watching, and we're going to have it on our website, which you can find at patrolfinder.com. If you go down all the way to the bottom, you'll see a YouTube channel, and that has all of the tactical tech briefings on that site. So this will be valuable long after the LA Tech grant has come and gone. So again, we're going to talk about identifying opportunities, building strong proposals, how to secure funding, enhance community safety. One of the key aspects, and you see that slide there, it says tell your story. And Moushé is going to go into that, as well as Chief Wilson, who Chief Wilson has some incredible stories that I think will be useful for you. You can apply some of the things he's saying and then tailor it to your own specific story. But without further ado, I want to introduce, first of all, our president and CEO, Antonio Civitella. Tony, tell us a little bit just about why we're here and what the significance is of grant funding when it comes to law enforcement technology.
Well, hello to everybody, and thank you for your time. There's a lot going on. It's really these grants are available, especially this particular one. It's more for let's get technology. Technology is moving extremely fast. It does get expensive, and what these grants are for is to make it affordable. Really, a lot of these grants they pay for the entire whether it's technology, certain type of technology. So it's very important that we want all police departments to take advantage of these grants. This is found money. It's we as taxpayers, we pay and we provide taxes for these type of services. So we want to educate as many people as possible, as many departments as possible that that money is there. Of course, do we love that departments across New York State are buying it, are using the grants to purchase Patrolfinder? Of course, but there's other things you could buy. So we just want to make sure we have the awareness. It's out there. We're going to talk a little bit about Patrolfinder, of course, about what we do, how the system is helping police departments manage their patrol a lot better. And really, it's all about the evidence-based policing and how we're going to be able to use data that's our system is collected every single day. And again, we're going to have a lot of takeaways. I know we're going to have a lot of stories about that. So I could go on and on about this, but let's move on to the other attendees here, Rick.
Thanks so much, Tony. So I'd like to introduce Chief Richard Wilson. He's with the Poughkeepsie Police Department. Chief, can you just tell me a little bit about your career path, really, but also your department?
Yeah, so I'm Rich Wilson. I'm the police chief in the city of Poughkeepsie. I took over in May 2024 and a long-serving police chief for 40 years and retired. I've been in the role since then. The city of Poughkeepsie is 4.5 square miles, about 32,000 residents. I've been on the police force for about 32 years, and I had some exposure to Patrolfinder while attending a chiefs of police meeting several years ago as a captain. And really found a lot of benefits in the exposure to the product. That I had done a lot of homework, to get Tony and the staff to bring the product to us and how we could potentially integrate it into the police department.
That's great. I know you have some great stories. We'll definitely come back to you because it's part of this whole grant process is also the narrative and justifying why you need Patrolfinder. And really, you've had some really great stories to share, so we'll get back to you. I'd like to also introduce the founder of GrantChamps, Moushé Babroudi. You got a great story to share as well, and we're going to have you also do a mini presentation because you have had some amazing success, specifically with the LETech grant, but also grants far and beyond that as well. So, Moushé, please tell us a little bit about your story as well as your experience in grant writing.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. I appreciate you having me on here. So I'm Moushé, as Rick mentioned. I'm one of the co-founders here at GrantChamps. We're a free tool for law enforcement to help you find, apply, and track grant funding that's out there. Previously, working in law enforcement technology sales, we realized that a lot of funding was missed. There's a lot out there, and there's a lot of intricate grants that many people don't know about. So we created a tool to help you find grants that you may be eligible for. Previously, we helped New York agencies win about $8 million in LETech funding in the 2023 round. And it was a great opportunity. And so we just created this tool in order to help departments win more when obviously budgets are tight right now. And besides GrantChamps, I'm a part-time police officer up in New Hampshire. I've been doing that for this is my 6th year now. And so I've been helping my agency with grants on that side as well. So I come from both sides of the table and I'm excited to be here.
That's great. Thanks so much. I just put together a little slide here as you were talking, um, just a little snapshot of some of just how much money there really is out there. And it's really all about making our community safer, making our police officers safer, giving them the tools they need to do their jobs the best they possibly can and most efficiently, but also, as Tony mentioned, evidence-based, very strategic. So anything I'm missing up there, I'm sure, Moushé, but pretty good numbers there, correct?
Absolutely. And there's a lot more. We found a lot more in states like New York that you won't even find if you just look them up. Some of these sites are very outdated. Grants, these grant tours use portals from the 90s. And so we designed this tool to help out with finding these as well.
Before we get to Chief Wilson, because I know you have a lot of stories, Chief, and I do want to talk a little, I'll just give you a little heads up so you know where I'm heading here, about talking about why you went with Patrolfinder, but also when you got LA Tech grant funding as well. So I want you to share your story. But I'm going to ask Moushé to kind of you have a mini presentation. If you don't mind, you just tell me when you want me to advance the slide. But
Yeah.
you have some amazing credibility. Grant Champs has some amazing credibility when it comes specifically to LA Tech grants. So can you want to go ahead, walk us through it?
Yeah. So the reason why I'm here today is because people like Patrolfinder, companies like Patrolfinder, going after departments that want grant funding, sometimes it gets really tough. A lot of the agencies we work with, they don't have the money to hire a grant writer, or don't have the time because chiefs nowadays wear many hats. And so, departments that are using our tool, and going for a grant, they can use it and help win applications for software like Patrolfinder. So in reality, it's really simple. If you're interested in a tool like Patrolfinder or anything else, you create a simple profile so we can find grants you're eligible for, and then you just get email alerts every time a grant comes up that you may be interested in. We make it really easy to figure out what the eligibility criteria is, so you can decide really quickly if it's worth going for or not. And then we walk you through each step of applying. So you can take that 100-page or 30-page document that the grant releases and make it into a step-by-step process. And so, like I mentioned before, LETech is an amazing grant. It is very flexible. You can use it for a lot of things, including technology, like we're mentioning today. And our mission is to help you guys fund things that maybe your budgets wouldn't allow to. And so we can jump into the next slide here. So, overall, very common grant mistakes that we see all the time and have seen recently. One of the biggest things is starting too late. You want to make sure that once you know about a grant, you apply as fast as you can, because typically these grants have questions you can ask to their team and get answers for. For example, with the LE Tech grant, they should be releasing their responses to questions tomorrow. But even though the deadline is September 2nd. And then another thing is making sure that you can justify why you want that money. You shouldn't be asking for gear. You should be talking about solutions that are going to solve real problems, evidence-based. And I know we're going to say evidence-based a lot. It's because data helps make such a stronger application. And that leads to the third point. Make sure you gather as much data as you can. Grants want to see how you currently stand, and with this funding, how that's going to help you improve your community or officer safety. And so,
Moushé, can I stop you there for a second?
absolutely.
Yesterday during the dry run, you also mentioned the importance of gathering people who can endorse the department. Is that a spot that would fit into that as well? Going,
Yeah.
right now, even before you start the application process, go ahead and ask your mayor, your county executive, business owners, anybody else who can write something in support. Would that fall under that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The last few grants that we were able to successfully help with, they were able to get letters of recommendation from community stakeholders, from business owners, from the mayors and town managers of their communities, and that all helps build a much stronger application. And so, if you can get those letters of support outside of the law enforcement world from people in your community, it can help go a long way.
And they can just start doing that right now. So before you even open up the grant process, go ahead and send a note to the folks that you know that are influential to start gathering that. Sorry, go ahead. Keep going on, Moushé.
You're absolutely right. No, it's great. The longest things that you should start preparing for early is getting quotes from vendors because sometimes they can take a while, depending on who you're asking it from. Reading the document as clearly as you can, making sure you follow the steps as clearly as you can, and then making sure you grab all the data from all the different sources that you have so you can help put a strong application together. If you can start those things early, you'll be in a very good spot.
Tony, it's just a little commercial here, but Tony, are we pretty quick at getting giving pricing?
I think we
If
could
they needed to get pricing right away, are we
I'm
pretty
pretty
quick
sure.
about that?
Well, it's great that you're asking that because we've presented our solution to hundreds of police department in the past 12 months, and especially in New York State, there's been a little bit on hold pattern because of this LETech, the law enforcement technology grant. It's because they're unsure, and it came out in July. A lot of rumors were in the springtime. And of course, we were already getting ready, saying, "Hey, we'll get you a quote. That way, you have it when they finally announced it." And announce, I think it was announced in the beginning of July. It was only a month ago. Um, Moushé, is that 60 days seems a little bit rush? Is that pretty common, or is that a little bit? You're not giving departments that much time. Am I making this up?
No, some grants definitely give a longer window, but lately I've noticed that even with federal grants, it may be 60 to 90 days of a window that you have to put an application in.
Which, by the way, as vendors, we're always going to go as fast as we need to go. So that's never going to be an issue. But the part is that some of these grants, and this is what keeps us at night based on this grant, that someone could not know it. But Chief Wilson, I'm sure you're well aware of it. Everyone in your position has been waiting for this grant for a long time. So I hope it's not a surprise that's finally out there. I think the total amount is $75 million for the state of New York, which is good money. We just want a little piece of that. We don't, right, Rick? I don't think we
That's
want
right.
a small piece, but take advantage of these grants. This is what all
And
of
we
us,
can get a quote to you quickly, as
for
Tony
sure,
said.
man. No question about it. And
We can
we've
turn it
already
around
been doing
fast.
it. We've already been preempting, sending out quotes, and I know there's rules around that, but we expect to have again, it's because of our data, and we're able to provide all this stuff.
Very
Is
good.
really
Okay,
it's
Moushé,
up itself.
continue on. Oh, sorry, Tony.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. And just make sure you read these documents as best as you can. For example, with the LE grant, with weapons, whether it's less lethal, whether it's lethal, they don't want to see those applications, and they have a specific list of eligible items that they're looking for. Make sure you go for one of those so you're not caught up and stuck at the bottom of the list when you're going for grant funding like this. So
And you,
overall, the message is just read the documents, the NOFO, the application guides as clearly as you can so you don't hurt yourself.
Nice.
And even things like, I mean, I don't want to say we've all done it. I know I've done it. Send an email without an attachment that I say is there. So little things like that, right? Moushé, you're saying like missing attachments, ignoring scoring criteria. Like, when you should look and see, like, you talked about this yesterday as well. over not. Oh no, I think Chief Wilson mentioned don't answer the questions that they're not asking, right, Chief?
Yeah. I mean, you have to be laser focused on answering what they're looking for, right? They want to get right into the grant. They want to see that you've demonstrated both factually and statistically the need, and then you expand upon that by narrative of how you're going to serve the community and how the product will better serve the community and reduce crime.
Great.
Absolutely. So overall, with the LETech grant specifically, prepare early, get vendor quotes and specs, ensure that what you're going for is either sole source on a cooperative contract or it's on the New York State contract, and then ensure category fit, which I'll jump into in a second. But also tell the story, like Chief Wilson said, make sure you define the real problem, how it's making an impact on your community or on your department, why things are falling short today and the impact it has on officer safety. And then sweat the details. Follow the RFA to a T. Every document, make sure they're complete, and then make sure you can articulate how your budget is currently and how it'll help improve your current standings. And so tell the complete story, not just what you're buying, but why it actually matters. And use evidence, use data, use statistics to help back up your application.
If I could stop here for a second, just because I want to bring Chief in again. You've won the LE Tech grant in the past. It was 3 years ago. You're going for it again this year. Your story is going to be slightly different because now you're going to talk about Patrolfinder. Am I correct?
Yeah, so I'm ahead of most on the curve because I was able to obtain Patrolfinder through the Gun Involved Violence Elimination Grant. Again, statistically demonstrating that we had particular areas, particular hotspot areas, particular evidence-based areas of high crime that we could focus our attention both in patrols and in spending time in there, which the product has the dosage time, right? It was very important. We demonstrate that monthly and quarterly in our reports to the state on that. And the patrol finders have had a direct, demonstrable, statistical impact as to how we're reducing crime in those areas. And the state wants to see that. They want to see that their investment has results.
Actually, Chief, you also, I'm sorry, I wasn't planning on doing this, but as I'm looking at what Moushé put together, I'm like, I got to go to. You actually went with Patrolfinder initially. What was the thing that said I got to talk to Tony was the impact on officer safety. Am I correct? That had to do with potential suicide by police,
Yeah, so
correct?
just a few months into me taking over the department as chief, we had an officer-involved shooting, and it originated with a call of a person with a gun inside an apartment building. I had an officer right at the end of the street that the call was dispatched to. He quickly responded. Obviously, he was right there on the street. Got out of his car, started making initial entrance by himself. And as I was reviewing the call and where his backup was, and how other officers ended up getting together and tactically approaching, I thought this technology would have been tremendous if the other officers were able to see where the backup was, right? So we had determined that his backup was probably a half dozen blocks away or what have you. And, maybe knowing that they could have tactically gone in together, three or four of them, and done that rather than just maybe becoming confrontational as a sole officer. So again, now it's up on the screens in the cars. The patrols use it regularly, and I think it's had a direct impact on how we respond more tactically.
Chief, I
Right.
confirmed this. We had an unfortunate traffic accident that hit the front door here at the building in downtown Schenectady, and of course, we had a lot of Schenectady Police Department officers who were here, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. So I was just talking to the officers, just, hey, how do you use Patrolfinder? And I was super surprised to hear how they use it. I thought, they're saying, hey, I know places where I need to be. It tells me places where no one's been, the whole patrol points and the dosage. I really thought I was going to get this massive, like, oh, this is great. The number one reason the officers use the product, saying, when I need backup, I'm waiting to see where to come around the corner. That's exactly what they said. Chief,
Right.
I know that it's been your big story, but and I think it's an amazing story. Unfortunate, but these officers in the middle of the street, past midnight, I'm asking them, hey, how do you use Patrolfinder? Well, I probably don't use everything you probably want me to use, but the number one reason I use it is that when I'm patrolling, I see all the data I need to address, where all the hot spots and so forth. I really use it to see where the other cars are at. And when he
Very
said
good.
that, I'm like, what?
That's
Of
great.
course, I'm thinking you could do a lot more than that, but we all know the reason why an officer wants to know where the other car is at because they're waiting for a backup. If a lot of times, especially the night crew, it doesn't matter if it's night or day. You want to know where they're coming around, and so, Chief, I've got to be honest with you, I was super surprised that these were younger members, right? Because they're the young ones get the midnight shift, right? And that was the number one reason. So I gotta share that with you guys.
That's great. Thanks, Tony. That's awesome. All right, Moushé, continue, please.
Yeah, if we can jump to the next slide here.
All right.
So one of the biggest things with the LETech grant this year, in the last round in 2023, it was very open. We helped the 14 officer agency went over $600,000. This year, it's a little different. There are categories that you need to fall into. They go from group 1 to group 7, and it's based on how many officers you have. So if you have a full-time officer, it counts as 1. If you have a part-time officer that works less than 40 hours, they count as 0.5. From the several agencies we spoke with recently, we determined that the state may have miscategorized them. And so it's just good to double check this chart and the chart that's in the RFA because you may be eligible for a little bit more money. As you can see, it goes up by 25,000 to several hundred thousand to several million if you are miscategorized. So double check this if you're going for the LETech grant. And if it's incorrect at all, email the state so you can be put in the correct group or category. And
Keep
so,
going.
yeah, we'll jump to the next one here.
All
I'm
right.
surprised. I mean, clearly there must be other grants. Is this the first time that the grant is based on number of sworn officers? Is this because I would
Yes.
think if you're applying,
The last round of tech did not have parameters such as these.
got it. So, Chief, because I feel like if there's going to be more of these type of grants that's based on your size, man, you want to make sure you're categorized correctly. Moshe, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
That's an easy mistake someone could make.
Yeah, it's new for the state. We've seen it in other states. We've seen it in some federal ones, but I wouldn't say it's too common. I'd say because of the previous round in 2023, they wanted to set some parameters so everyone had a fair shot of winning because they're looking at giving out about 500 awards depending on how many applications they get, and they want to distribute that 75 million properly. So
Makes sense.
overall, tips to just win grants, use numbers. If you're denied, New York LETech grant does have an email that you can send a message out to get feedback on. Show that you can execute. There are, I believe, quarterly requirements for this grant, and they want to make sure that you're using this funding properly and it's actually making an impact. And then build on past wins. What we've noticed with agencies applying to grants is that if you save the information somewhere on your computer or wherever you want to, and you can reference this, if you have a successful application, you can simplify the process next time for the next grant you go for and make sure you save time and you have a better chance of winning funding. So make sure you save all your work. And so it's never about the biggest department. It's always about the strongest case that you can build.
When you approach a grant, Moushé, do you do you just like read the whole thing straight front to back and just before you even begin the process, or do you, okay, I can do that right now, or like what's the best way just for somebody who's a novice, is never like Chief Wilson's going to talk a little bit. He does have a grant writer on the department. Not everybody does, but you first hear about it. What's your first step?
Yeah, so at least for agencies using GrantChamps, the first step is just check your inbox. You'll get a notification, hey, the New York LETech grant came out. There's 75 million being awarded. It's due September 2nd. Check out the eligibility criteria on our platform. We break it down super simple, so you can see if it's worth it or not. This one is definitely worth it. Every agency has technology they need to purchase. And then in our system, we break down the entire RFA into a step-by-step guide. So we tell you exactly what to do, when to do it, so you can save time, make sure you're on the right track. And so, yeah, I recommend every agency to just review the RFA as a whole. But if you're on our system, we break it down to make it super simple to understand, especially for the federal ones that may be 100 pages. It can get tedious if you have a lot of other things going on. So that's overall the message is just read everything as best you can so you don't mess up, you don't do things incorrectly.
Very good. Awesome. Um, Are there, Chief, when you got into this process, I mean, was there anything that surprised you about it? I mean, when you wanted to give Grant and LETech, I mean, are there things, and again, we're thinking about the bigger audience out there, police chiefs that could be across the country that said, you know what? Number one of the goals, by the way, of this webinar is specifically is to demystify, right, Moushé? We can demystify grant writing. It doesn't have to be this, perception that it's this big laborious thing. It's work for sure. But Chief Wilson, was there anything surprised you in this process in your past grant endeavors?
No, I mean, like you had said, Moushé goes through the grant top to bottom. I'm a little more fortunate that I go through a grant, very quickly at 50,000 feet and say, hey, do we qualify for this 50,000, this 100,000, or what have you? And my grant writer goes through and looks for through the fine tooth comb approach to see what is actually contained with it. And there are things that will prohibit us from getting it, right? There's a letter, a small section that we don't qualify for. And those are the important things, because if you don't go through it, because you don't have the ability of having a grant writer, or the fortunate to have a grant writer, that you spend an awful lot of time of preparing these grants when you actually don't qualify for it anyway. So it is important that you do go through it to make sure, because you may find that one or two sentences in there that prohibit you from getting it, and you move on to other funding sources.
As you're applying for this new one, Chief, what kind of data points are you including? Because you're already ahead of the curve, like you've mentioned. What kind of data points, and you touched on it a little bit, but can you go a little more in detail, just so for others that are watching this, what kind of data points are you including in your grant application?
Really anything that'll have that evidence-based impact on crime, right? Whether it be shootings, whether it be violent crimes, whether it be the reduction on the front side, the crime prevention pieces, whether they be cameras, license plate readers, gunshot detection. There is so much technology out there that it's very broad on with the LETech that allows you to cover a lot of different spaces within that money you could potentially qualify for. So I think a good approach is to spread that out over several different technologies and kind of bring them all together as a wholesale reduction or impact on crime.
Right. Hey, Michelle, can you give me? I'm going to give you a two-part question here, which I don't like getting two-part questions myself because I don't remember the second one. But well, you're younger than me, so you probably will remember. What do reviewers look for in those first minutes of reading an application? And then part of that is what makes an application really stand out from the rest. Our goal is we want everybody who's watching this webinar, we want to give everybody a leg up on that. So, what are those readers looking for? And how do you make that, like when you did your resume back in the old days, you didn't do this probably, but I think the others on this panel may have actually used paper resumes. Some people use fancy paper, or whatever. So to stand out that, the job application, they might
Hold up. So
actually.
you mean you don't use fancy paper? That was like,
Well, I haven't sent out a resume in a while, Tony. I just, you are my
that's good
boss. That's
news.
why
I,
there's no resumes going on.
you know
But
that I literally I would hold up resume in the air and see if there was one of those fancy
I
paper.
remember you telling me that
Yeah.
for the watermark.
Of course. Please invest in yourself. Sorry.
So, and that's actually it's a funny analogy, but it's actually true. So that's what makes it stand out, right? That's what would make it stand out for Tony, who's a very detail-oriented guy. So Moushé, can you give us, and Chief Wilson, please feel free to jump in as well, because you've had success in your grants as well. But Moushé, for starters, can you tell me, what are they looking for in those first minutes as they're looking that's going to grab them, and then what's going to make it stand out from the others?
I'd say it always starts with the eligibility criteria. Like Chief Wilson mentioned earlier, like there might be some things that, like a small section in the grant application section that says, hey, if you're part of this program, you're not eligible or something like that. It's key to notice those things and make sure you understand if your agency is actually eligible. I've seen it time and time again where there's these small nuanced pieces that disqualify an agency, but they don't read it and they still go for the application, spend 20 hours writing a grant, and unfortunately it doesn't work out because they missed that. So that's definitely one of the key pieces. Just make sure you're eligible. Two, figure out how hard of a grant it is to apply. Some of these grants want a lot of supporting documents. They want a lot of evidence to help back up the claims that you're making. If you're applying for acoustic gunshot detection tool like ShotSpotter, for example, but you don't have shots fired in your community too often or at all, it's probably not going to be a strong application to go for, and it might not make sense to go for that grant. And then besides that, going to your second question, make sure you read the actual scoring criteria. For example, with the LETech grant, it goes up to 100 points in how they're evaluating you, and it breaks down exactly what section of the application is a certain amount of points. And so if you, in statement of need number A or letter A, if you can describe if this is a new or expanding initiative, if the department budget does not cover the requested items, if you can fill in that area exactly how they want to see it, you could max out those points and then describe exactly why you need that need in the project plan. That's
Very
exactly what
good.
you'd be looking for.
Yeah, and
Chief Wilson, anything you want to add?
Yeah, along those lines, right? So as you do, you give those statistics, right? So, mine was heavily based on violent crime, and where they were occurring in certain neighborhoods. But in discussing with some of my colleagues that have larger patrol areas, how can you get products that will help you be more effectively and efficiently able to patrol 50 square miles with limited manpower, right? And if the tools and technology are out there so you can better manage the staff that you do have, especially, and I spoke about this before, in the unassigned time, right? In patrol, there's unaccounted for unassigned time, right? That we're waiting for call to call. That if that can be more productive and more effective in patrolling our communities, that's where we're going to win. That's where we're going to have a direct impact on crimes that haven't even occurred because we're more visible, we're more readily available within the community.
To piggyback on what you mentioned earlier as well, is there value? Moushé, you talked about like if you've already won this grant, you use that as kind of like a template for your next application. Is there also a piece of it, and Chief Wilson, I don't know if you're going to do this or not, with the LETech grant, to actually almost like pat them on the back, the state for like, hey, thank you for investing in, I don't know how you word it, what the proper terminology is, but for those that have won LETech in the past who are watching this webinar, is there value to go and say you have some sort of piece of like with what you did before, here's the rest of the story, 3 years later, it's not even though it's required in this part of the application, just to kind of, I mean, they are human beings as well, right? Reading this to say, hey, wow, a little bit of appreciation goes a long way, maybe. I don't know. Thoughts on that, either one of you?
Yeah, it comes down to the story as well. If you had incidents happening in your area, like Tony, you mentioned there was a bad crash in Schenectady, and maybe that could be a reason why you need certain tools to help with crash investigations. If you can also paint that picture and talk to the grant like a human's reviewing it, which they are, on top of the evidence-based statistics and data that you can provide, it is going to go a long way.
I think in this round of the LETech, so round one was like 120 million, this being 75 million. I think the state's going to want to see some demonstration of sustainability as well, right? You can jump into the new technology and the new products, but are you able to sustain those in the out years and what have you? And I think that they're going to want to see some demonstration of that this time, that there's not going to be a wholesale reliance on just the grant funding.
I got to tell you, I have to use it for our own example here. As a technology company, we invest a lot of technology. We do. We invest a lot, and it's not a surprise to all of you. But to get everyone on board with the technology, believe it or not, it is a challenge. And so I know that, great, you buy a certain product and now you think it's going to be the best thing that you've purchased for the department. I can tell you personally here at the company, and this year, of course, been a major investment in AI and really brand new tools for a lot of people. And it doesn't matter what age group, by the way. It's not an age group thing. It's really about, hey, why am I doing this? I've always done it this way. Why do I need to change? And we're seeing it ourselves here at the company that almost across the board, there's a little hesitation why we're making some changes. I mean, the big change is to be efficient, Chief. I think that is a number one reason. But if someone doesn't believe it's going to be more efficient, look, we have these meetings. It's a 2-hour meeting. Our tools take our meeting, completely summarize the entire 2 hours, which, by the way, some people can talk and take notes. At this point, it's taking notes for you. It's summarizing. It's even created an email for you to say, send this to Chief Wilson after your meeting. Plus, it could say, hey, you forgot to mention these 4 things to Chief Wilson. Those are amazing. But again, it's a little bit of fear. And Chief, I'm sure you know, there's adding technology into someone's day is a little bit unknown, and it's a little hesitation. So you and I have had this conversation about adaptation, right? How, is it easy to get used to? And I think it does take leadership to say, this is going to be good. Give me a chance. And I think, Chief, this is where right away, I remember when first meeting you and I presented the data the first time, you were like almost like smiling in certain data because your spidey sense knew it. That's the data. You weren't super surprised, but now you finally have something like, I could show somebody within 30 seconds, show them the data without saying my spidey sense, my gut feeling, which I love spidey sense, but some people don't like that. They're not going to spend tons of money on my gut feeling.
No, but exactly what you said, right? So that statistical data, that evidence-based data, gave more accountability, more trust in me and the police department, right, as a whole, because now I have supporting statistical documentation of how we are doing things better, right? It's not just hyperbole or just me orating how good we are, right? I had backup and statistical data, and that's what people want to see. And then that builds even more trust and more reliance and more confidence in the police department, the people that are staffed here.
Perfect. And Moushé, you would think as you build confidence, as you build a track record for a police department, when you apply for some of these grants, it probably shows in how you respond because you've done it before. You have real data to prove. And I think more of these things, sometimes, Moushé, and I'm not saying LETech should be one of those, sometimes, and we do it too, we respond to tons of RFPs all the time, knowing that some of those RFPs, we may not qualify exactly, but something, we're going to learn from it because the feedback session is great. They'll tell us what we're missing. And so we go through everything. There are tons of shots on goals. And for that reason, because we want to learn, all right, what can we do better next time? So we're constantly applying to RFPs for, don't misunderstand me. We want to win them all, of course, but we know that some of them we're not going to win, but we want to see how close did we get, and our feedback makes us better.
It's the same thing with grants. If you keep practicing, you put the repetitions in, you're going to get better at it. And we say that to agencies all the time. Before we created GrantChamps, we worked with agencies ourselves manually trying to help them with grants. And we realized that some of these grants, having so many documents, so many things to do, actually dissuaded agencies from applying for it because they just didn't have the time or they didn't want to spend the money to have someone write it for them. So the same applies for grants overall.
And I would say on the heels of that, well, and again, I'm a little more fortunate, but think about that. So exactly what he said is some of these grants are developed with a friction built in so that everybody doesn't go through the painstaking process to do it. And think about that. If you're one of them that actually does that, you may be a recipient of a large award because others didn't put the time and effort in fighting through that friction to apply a successful application. That is built in to some of these grants. The friction is there.
So when Tony alluded to the point of like, not everybody wins every grant they go after, um, there's still lots of information. Am I correct? When you don't win, that will help you in that next round. Am I correct? Both of Chief Wilson and Moushé, that you will like they provide you a explanation of areas where you were weak or those kind of things. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
yeah. I mean, it certainly can. And listen, some of it you may not have actually fulfilled all of the all of what they're looking for in the grant, right? So I mean, some of that will be kind of self-explanatory. That'll be pointed out to you, right? Typically, those are going to be the losses. But if you apply and meet the criteria of what the application is actually looking for, I mean, you're going to have some better success on those. But again, depending on the pool of money available, and then depending on how many candidates, how many agencies, how many municipalities compete for it.
Moushé, anything you want to add?
No, that's exactly
I
right.
mean,
The chief is.
can you go back to a funding agency and ask for more details if you don't win something? Can you say, hey, where were we weak if they didn't give you a lot of great detail? Is there a mechanism for that?
Yeah, so like for example, right next door in Pennsylvania, there's a common one called the LSA grant that occurs every year. They have analysts that get assigned several or many agencies, and they do provide feedback like, hey, you're missing this on your application, get this done before the deadline, or hey, you didn't get this award, here's why. And so depending on the grant, you can get a lot of feedback. Sometimes for the federal ones, it's a little difficult because they have so many applicants, but I've seen with the statewide ones, the county ones, they're typically a lot better about it.
Great. Um, so, I can throw this out to all, including Tony. How do you measure, the return on investment from a grant funded technology? Because you're going to have to, I'm assuming, I know in many grants, right, you have to go back with some reporting, right? You have to report, it's either quarterly, I don't know if it's annually. So you can talk a little bit about this, Moushé, on the LA Tech side of stuff, but then on a general, bigger scope, and then others can just jump in. But how do you're measuring it, you're reporting it, what problems you're solving, progress. Can you give me a little bit of detail on that aspect of once you win the grant? So we talked a little bit about losing the grant, but let's not dwell too much. You win the grant, now what?
Yeah, so it's kind of twofold. So some grants just want you to report on the financial aspect of it. Some of them want you to also report on how it's actually making an impact on your community. Typically, that's all done through the grant portals or the e-grant portals that these agencies or grantors have. And so typically they list that very clearly at the very start, even before you submit your application. You know exactly what you need to do to stay compliant with the grant process. Even if you're awarded the grant money and you don't go through that reporting requirement, it might hurt you in the future when more funding comes up. And so it's very important to read the RFAs and the NOFOs just so you understand exactly what you need to do after the fact to stay in good standing. And so I always recommend agencies to stay up to date with that, put calendar reminders for when you need to. Typically, they'll also send reminders as well. But in order to keep yourself in good standing for future funding opportunities, it is always good to make sure you know what to do. Specifically for
You don't want to be known for the bad stuff. You want to stay under the radar, be ahead of the curve and reporting and all that kind of not have them
exactly.
chasing after you.
Yeah, like for the LETech grant, for if you applied in 2023 and you're applying now, you need to show how this is going to expand on capabilities or how this is going to be different from what you applied for in 2023. And so they're looking at what you've done previously. They want to see that you're improving your agency, you're using this money for a good cause. And so, yes, you always want to make sure you stay compliant with whatever the grant is looking for.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think along with that, there's enough challenges, enough difficulties, enough shortcomings that we could go through in law enforcement. But in some of the technology that's been purchased, I think it's important to keep score on the wins, right? Like our drones. We bought a number of drones off the last technology grant. We averted a likely suicide and recovered 2 handguns involved in crimes immediately following the crimes in those, right? Our license plate readers, the license plate readers are sort of under fire and scrutiny across the country. However, we solved a homicide and a couple of other shootings in that, right? I mean, the municipalities, the people that live in the municipalities, they want to see some success in what they're purchasing, right? And what their police departments are doing with this funding and how this technology is reducing crime or having an impact within the communities. So touting those wins is just important. Look, there's enough challenges, like I said, but yeah, you have to tout the wins when they happen because they do want to see that there's successes as well.
My recommendation has always been keep a running list. It is very hard for when a grant comes out to compile all this data at once. If you can have a running list of all those wins, how that technology or things that you've implemented with grant funding has helped, or in general, how it could help, it'll help streamline that process for when funding opportunities come up. Because overall, you can copy and paste that to any grant you're going for, depending on
Or
what you're
keep a
looking
running folder somewhere. Keep something where because it's like you're not going to remember it all.
right. It
Well,
definitely helps.
he's 100% right, and it's so much more effective and efficient if you have it there in applying for the grant than trying to work backwards to figure out the wins from a year, 6 months, a year and a half apart from when the wins happen, right? So yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with him anymore.
But I got to add too, because I think we talked about grants, winning the grants, or just doing anything. And this is where how I manage my company is to, whenever we implement something new, and I know everyone here in the audience is the good stewards, right? They're good stewards based on it's the taxpayers' money. So we need to always show, hey, you trusted me to spend this money wisely, right, Chief? And now here's what my results. And I think this is where it's become more and more. People are expecting that. They're not just asking, it's an expectation. But when you have all this data, right, Chief, you could be the good steward that people are hired to do. And that's where there is a responsibility that, to manage, the finance. I mean, spending money, even as my company, sure, I could write some checks, but I can't, they're not unlimited. So let's look at it. What's the impact and how the financial impact, and also what's my reward? What's my return on reinvestment? It's not always so easy to determine, especially if you're not tracking things. If you don't
Right.
track data, how the heck do you know? It's like, I want to lose 10 pounds. Well, if you don't weigh yourself before you say that, how do you know when you reach the 10 pounds loss? And it's that simple, but everyone knows tracking data is super laborious. And this is where you got to find better way to get data out of what you do day to day.
Chief, yesterday during our dry run, so we talked about specifically the LETech grant. Again, I think that this will be applicable for others in other states that are looking. And again, this is put on by Patrolfinder, so I'm kind of unabashedly going to share a little bit about Patrolfinder. You talked about like this. You said basically departments that are going to be considering Patrolfinder. I asked you, how could they help strengthen their application? You said basically go to the patrolfinder.com website because there's a ton of information. Can you go into a little bit of detail how that is going to be? You have your own story obviously already, and you are on our website as well. But can you share a little guidance for somebody that's saying, okay, I'm learning more about Patrolfinder. I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to go for the LA Tech grant, put it toward that. Can you give them some next steps?
For me or Moushé?
No, this is for you, Chief Wilson. It can be
Yeah,
for both,
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
But
So I think on the beginning of that grant, right, it's important to give the statistical data that you're trying to draw your audience's attention to. How big your department is, how big the square mileage you're covering, what your calls for service look like, things of that statistical nature that you can prove. And then I had said there's some different narratives, some different qualifying information on the website that you can really cut and paste exactly what Patrolfinder can offer, that you don't have to reinvent a narrative. This is what the product is capable of doing, and this is how it's going to impact operations within the police department and that municipality. I think it really is that clear cut. Statistics and then some quantifiable, narratives, if you will, and even some supporting information, from the company, through direct or indirect communication, emails or text messages. Tony and your company has always been very receptive to any questions I've had, and I was successfully able to do it.
Yeah,
And this was stepping out of where our department had been from, right? I wanted to take a chance on this. I thought this was going to be huge on the forefront of where I thought policing was going. And I still stick to that today. It has been a tremendous product for my police department.
Chief, you have a great point about it. If you're going to buy a product, you have in your mind what the benefits of that product. But you're right. Lean on the vendor saying, hey, I'm going to apply a grant to buy your product. Give me the talking points. I mean, Chief, we want to simplify the process for you. We want to be able to say, just copy and paste. If you have to start typing in and making up terminologies and benefits of why buying Patrolfinder, we failed as a vendor. We really do. We need to provide that for you, especially a well thought out message that has been proven around the country. So I think you're right. You go to a website, you go to patrolfinder.com, and you can just literally copy and paste into the grant. That's perfect. And again, I'm expecting all vendors should do that, but because we know there's a lot of grants you're filling out.
Yeah, you don't want to say you're just going for equipment. You want to justify how this equipment is going to help that problem that you're trying to solve. I used to do it all the time when I was in sales. I would write grant applications for government agencies applying for grants. And so that's something we're working on at GrantChamps. So if we know an agency is going for, Patrolfinder technology, we'll pull that data using AI about what Patrolfinder does and what the grant is looking for, what the state of New York is looking for, how LETech wants you to justify it, and try to help draft a narrative for you or a justification for you. And that's one of the most critical pieces. You need to line up the equipment you're going for with what the grantor wants to see and merge that together to create a stronger application.
Yep.
That's great. So we have the lightning round. We're coming toward the end. I'm going to have a unique, this is something I don't normally do. I usually ask one general question for everybody, but I'm going to have a specific question for each one of you. I'm going to start with Chief and then Moushé and then close with Tony. So for you, Chief Wilson, what's one piece of advice you'd give to every chief that's applying for LETech specifically, or you can be generic if you want to about any grant, but what's one piece of advice you'd give to them?
Again, just be statistically thorough on the front side. And then in the narrative portion, just explain the impact that this technology or what you're purchasing off the grant, the impact that's going to make and what the return investment that you anticipate looks like. I think that's like a pretty good winning recipe for grant applications.
Very good. Moushé, what's the single most important thing a department should do this week? So it's Tuesday already. If they're planning to apply for the LETech grant, right now, what should they be doing?
Just like Chief mentioned, grab as much data as you can. Get your quotes, grab the data so you can have a strong application and read the entire RFA. We've noticed that the most common mistakes are the most simple ones. And so make sure you know exactly what you need to do and how to apply for it. So you have a strong chance of winning a piece of that $75 million.
Very good. And Tony, why should agencies invest in proactive patrol technology? I think that's known as a layup.
It is a layup. Well, it is a layup. When we started working with the Schenectady PD, really, Chief Clifford, a friend of mine, came to me several years ago, wanted to really increase visibility of the officers. He came to me and we built a product, and it's grown so much. In the past several years, we've added a lot more clients. We're now in 5 different states, bringing on different departments. And each department's what we've learned have different needs. But they all want to make sure that the location-based intelligence is there, the mapping, the data, always looking at how we can improve the safety of each officers. We still have to respond to emergency. We know that. So are we giving the officers better, faster data so they can respond quicker? And those are all the things that is a beginning. But we have so much in the product. But we know that the community trust in police departments, have been a wave. It's been up and down. But I want to help police departments across the country to get the trust back, especially the transparency, especially all the data. And we're seeing results right now as a lot of departments are not able to afford to hire more officers. And we're seeing that our product is helping them become more efficient, that we have now several police chiefs have personally called us, and we have case studies with them that the community has literally called them up saying, "What are you doing? Did you hire more cops? I see cops all the time." They didn't. It's because, like Chief Wilson, you have the downtime. How are you using it? How are you utilizing that time? That's just considered patrol. So there's just so much. And Chief, there's a new version coming out soon that I can't wait till you see this. It's called Live Share, and it's super helpful to not just within your own department, but start bringing other agencies that are responding to a real crisis. So I can't wait till you see it.
Tony, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's actually award-winning. That technology just won a national award, actually, Live Share. Tony, you alluded to something I was going to say earlier, so I'm glad you said that this has been an ever-evolving product as well. And so we really do see the feedback we receive from departments. Dosage was not part of the original product. Am I correct, Tony?
It's always been something that we hear, but how to pull it off, right? How to pull off dosage is something that was not easy. And so from just feedback and also inside the car, how do you do this? So now we have a really easy to user interface and these are shapes that the departments will draw, and each dosage, and it could be a parking lot of, maybe a Target store or a Walmart or a super center that maybe more activities are happening. Well, we draw a shape, the car now has to go in there, and they literally have a little countdown. They have a little countdown to say if the Chief Wilson said, you got to be there for 10 minutes, literally it gets there, it says 10:00, 9:59, 9:58, and so forth. And literally, it's right there. It's telling the officers, hey, just drive around a parking lot because you need to apply that same amount of time. And that's been proven. If you apply the right amount of dosage, which means you're hanging out there. And I know that a lot of theories, you could get out of the car, walk around, but you have to physically be present. Let the community see you in that. It could be a block, could be 2 or 3 houses. You know what those are.
But the thing is like this product continues to get better as people like Chief Wilson say, I love it. And you know what would be really cool if you could do this or this. And so it just keeps getting stronger. So Tony mentioning that he can't wait to share the new version that's coming out. That's the way this product works. So if you looked at it a year ago and you're not sure, well, let me just tell you, it's not the same product that it was a year ago.
Nothing.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we give some contact information from Moushé. So there it is there, at Moushé at GrantChamps.com. You can see that again. You will be able to find this presentation on the Patrolfinder.com homepage. You just got to scroll down to the very bottom, but look for that YouTube icon and you will be good to go there. I do want to just thank Chief Wilson, Moushé, and Tony for just sharing their expertise in this. I hope that this conversation has been useful for you. And just as just a next step, a starting point, The ultimate goal was to, number one, learn from others' missteps. Moushé really pointed out, and Chief Wilson, not reading the grant thoroughly, applying for things that you really don't apply, going after weapons in this case, for the LETech, not the way to go. And then also just to demystify it, go for it. And further ado, I just want to thank everybody again for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank